You're listening to Calm Living Blueprint Revisited, Reflections from the Path with Dr. Candice Esposito. So up to this point, we've been placing a lot of our focus on the painful feelings you struggle with and the painful thoughts you get entangled by. Basically, a lot of the things that you don't want. But we haven't yet focused too much on what you do want, what sort of person you want to be, what sort of relationships you want to build, what you want to do with your life to make it richer, fuller, and more meaningful. Okay, so that's what this podcast episode is going to be about. When I listen to that opening now, I can hear the shift that was already trying to happen. Up until then, the work was about loosening anxiety. But this episode was never really about anxiety at all. It was about orientation, about remembering that calm isn't the end goal. It's what naturally follows when your life starts moving in a true direction. In the original episode, I asked questions that most people rarely stop to ask. What are you here for? What makes your life worth living? Those questions still stop people in their tracks because anxiety often fills the space where meaning hasn't yet been named. When you don't know what you're living for, the nervous system stays vigilant, scanning, bracing. Not because something is wrong, but because there's no clear direction to rest into. The whole point of what we're doing here is, sure, to help you overcome anxiety. But at a deeper level, it's about helping you to live a rich, full, and meaningful life. That sentence holds the entire arc of this work. You don't actually want to overcome anxiety. You want to live. Anxiety only became the problem because it interrupted movement toward what mattered. This distinction, I think, remains one of the most grounding teachings I shared back then. I want to clarify at this point that values are not the same as goals. And the metaphor still holds. Values are like a compass. Okay, a compass gives you direction and keeps you on track when you're traveling, right? And our values do the same for the journey of life. We use them to choose the direction in which we want to move and to keep us on track as we go. So when you act on a value, it's like heading west. No matter how far west you travel, you never get there, right? There's always further to go. But goals are like the things you try to achieve along the journey. They're like the sights you want to see or the mountains you want to climb while you keep on traveling west. Back then, this helped people stop putting their lives on hold. Today, I'd add this. Goals ask, when will I arrive? Values ask, how do I want to walk? One creates tension, the other creates coherence. Values tend to be much more empowering than goals because they're always available to us. In any moment, you have the choice to act on your values or not. This matters more than it sounds. When your nervous system knows that you can act in alignment right now, it stops waiting for permission. Values bring you into the present. They give the body something steady to organize around. This is why values-based living is inherently regulated. I shared a story back then that I think still lands with quiet gravity. I think one of the best examples of why values are so important comes from the book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. If you haven't read that book yet, I highly, highly recommend it. Viktor Frankl was a Jewish psychiatrist who survived years of unspeakable horror in Auschwitz and other Nazi camps. He describes his experience in those camps in the book that he wrote, Man's Search for Meaning. And one thing that's fascinating, and maybe not what we would expect, is the fact that the people who survived longest in the death camps were often not the physically most fit or the physically strongest, but those who were connected with a purpose in life. If prisoners could connect with something they valued, a loving relationship with their child, for example, or an important book they wished to write, that connection gave them something to live for, something that made it, in Mr. Frankl's words, worthwhile to endure all that suffering. Frankl's sense of purpose came from deeply valuing his relationship with his wife. During the most painful times, he would conjure up a mental image of his wife and think about how much he loved her. He also valued helping others in the camp. He valued listening to them, giving them words of kindness, tending to the sick, and he helped people connect with their own deepest values. That was enough to keep him going. He lived by his values. And as the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how." Fear becomes unbearable when there is no why. But when life is oriented towards something meaningful, fear becomes something you can walk with. Not because it disappears, but because it no longer leads. I think this metaphor is still perfect. Okay, so to illustrate this, imagine that there's two kids in the back of a car, and mom's driving them to Disneyland, right? It's a 3-hour trip to get there, and one of the children is saying, every 5 minutes, "Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet, Mom?" And Mom, of course, gets annoyed. The child gets frustrated. They're snapping at each other. Lots of tension. The other child, meanwhile, is looking out the window, waving at the other cars, noticing all the towns and the farms along the way. Both children reach Disneyland at the same time. Both children have a great time while they're there. But only one of those children had a rewarding journey. Because anxiety often sounds like, "Are we there yet? Why am I not better yet? What's wrong with me?" Whereas values say, "Look out the window." And suddenly, life is happening again. What if success is living by your values? Let that land again. Success is not the absence of fear. Success is showing up as who you choose to be, even when fear is present. That truth dissolves so much pressure. This part feels especially relevant right now. Point number 4, values are best held lightly. And what I mean by this is that you want to be aware of your values and act on them, but at the same time, you don't want to fuse with them or get entangled in them, because then they start to feel oppressive and restricting. They turn into rigid rules rather than flexible guidelines. Even values can become another way to attack yourself if you grip them too tightly. Values are guides, not weapons. They orient you. They don't judge you. I feel like this exercise can still open hearts. Imagine your ideal 80th birthday. If magic could happen and all your dreams come true. So it's your 80th birthday, and everyone who truly matters to you, friends, family, parents, children, colleagues, anyone and everyone you truly care about, even if they're no longer alive, are gathered in your honor. Now imagine that one person whom you really care about, friend, child, partner, parents, you choose. This one person stands up to make a speech about you. A short speech, no more than 3 or 4 sentences. And they talk about what you stand for in life, what you mean to them, and the role that you have played in their life. And imagine them saying whatever it is deep in your heart you would most love to hear them say. What strikes me now is that the exercise isn't about the future. It's about clarity in the present. It reveals what your body already knows matters. And often, it shows us the quiet grief of what we've been postponing. Now, when I ask people, what do you really want? I'll often hear things like, I just want to be happy, or I want confidence, or I want to be successful. And these all may be truthful answers. However, they're not particularly deep. They're not deep. We need to go deeper than just scratching the surface. We need to connect with our heart and souls to really consider. Wanting to feel better is human. Values live underneath feelings. Remember, values describe what you want to do and how you want to do it. This is where life begins to move again. Listening back now, I hear how this episode was quietly asking people to stop organizing their lives around fear, to stop waiting to feel ready, to start living from what mattered, gently and perfectly, honestly. Anxiety softens not because you defeated it, because it stopped being the center. Values are about ongoing action. They're our heart's deepest desires for how we want to spend our brief time on this planet. They're like a compass. They give us direction and keep us on track. That was true then, and it's still true now. Calm doesn't come from fixing yourself. It comes from orienting your life toward truth. In the next episode, we'll explore how this clarity begins to shape choice, action, and identity. I'm Dr. Candice Esposito, and this is Calm Living Blueprint Revisited.